And seeing or smelling smoke in the cabin, was that a worry?
It looks like this has just become a video of how Sri Lankan Airlines handles things when things go wrong. This flight may not have turned out as expected, but it certainly started off as any normal flight would. I'm therefore going to start this as a normal review, blissfully unaware of the impending drama that would unfold. This way I can take you on the entire journey exactly how it was experienced. It's flight time at the airport and I'm ready to fly. Today's journey will see us flying from Melbourne through to Sri Lanka with Sri Lankan Airlines. Now, I flew them in business class pre-pandemic and I was impressed. Since then, Sri Lanka as a destination and Sri Lankan Airlines have suffered, especially coming out of the pandemic. But both are on the road to recovery. Sri Lanka is definitely back on the tourism map, and I'm really curious to see what the service is like at Sri Lankan Airlines these days. Join me, let's fly to Colombo and we'll experience it together. After customs, it was through duty free and straight up to the lounge. As a One World member, Sri Lankan Airlines uses the Qantas lounges here in Melbourne. Because of my platinum status with Qantas, I'm lucky to have access to the first class lounge, which is much better than the business class lounge, which is well overdue for an upgrade. This lounge really is lovely and a wonderfully luxurious way to start any flight. And it's time to fly. Thank you. Bye-bye. Let's go to Sri Lanka. Today's journey would be on an 8-year-old Airbus A330-300, and due to the late arrival of the incoming aircraft, boarding started an hour later than normal. How you going? How you going? Hello. How are you? 6 so far. That one? Lovely, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Cheers. Here's to a great flight.
Welcome on board Sri Lankan Airlines. We'd like to take a few moments to take you through the safety procedures on board this flight.
We taxied out to the runway and took off. In every way, this felt very much like a normal, ordinary, everyday flight. Little did we know that in less than an hour we'd be back here with quite the welcome reception waiting for us. Today's flight was scheduled to cover the almost 8,500 kilometre distance to Colombo non-stop in 9 hours and 45 minutes. Before takeoff, the crew had taken our orders for post-departure drinks and dinner. I was looking forward to a gin and tonic, the salmon starter and a Sri Lankan curry for the main course. Once we were over 10,000 feet, you could hear the crew busy at work preparing for the dinner service. We were climbing through 21,000 feet and everything was normal, and then it wasn't. As a very frequent flyer, I can sense when things are fine, but I can also very quickly sense when things are not. The first thing I noticed was a flight attendant running up the aisle to the cockpit. Then, for only a few seconds, I smelt a strong smell of something burning. It wasn't fire, it was more like an electrical burnout. Almost immediately I could feel us stop climbing and then start to descend. My ears filled this stuff straight away. I could also feel the telltale sign of us slowing down as the flaps caused a mild shake in the aircraft. At this stage I knew something was wrong. I was looking out the window to see at what rate we were descending and if we were dumping fuel. Luckily we weren't, and our descent was very controlled. At this point the captain made a quick announcement in Sinhalese, followed by English, which simply said, "Prepare to land." It looks like this has just become a video of how Sri Lankan Airlines handles things when things go wrong. Looking at the recording of the flight on flight radar, it appears that at about this time, the captain declared an emergency and the aircraft started squawking the code 7700, which signifies an emergency. This code triggers all sorts of things at the airport, which I will cover in a minute. Back on board, I was looking out the window trying to work out if we were continuing on to land in Adelaide or returning to Melbourne. The captain then made a longer announcement, stating that due to a technical fault, we would be returning to Melbourne. I could see on the in-flight map that we had descended to a level altitude and were now starting to circle to burn fuel. This eased my mind and removed all anxiety, as I knew the fault didn't require an immediate landing. Whilst the crew continued to pack up the galley and prepare for landing, the mood in the cabin was one of calm. The crew also made announcements to advise us all to take our seats and fasten our seatbelts immediately. These announcements were calm but clear, and again did not cause any further anxiety as far as I could see. At this stage, I couldn't see any smoke or smell burning, but I found out later there had been a fair bit of smoke right at the back of the aircraft. What we did all notice though is that the cabin was getting pretty warm as the air conditioning had been turned off. Knowing that we were in safe hands, I was really interested in what would happen next. In addition to working in the travel industry helping to run our family business Bunnik Tours, I'm the chair of CATO, the Council of Australian Tour Operators. I've been involved in crisis management for many years and helped organise a number of CATO crisis management forums for the travel industry, so I knew what should be happening but was really interested to actually see it in action. When an aircraft squawks 7700, it automatically activates the full emergency plan at the relevant airport. Melbourne Airport's emergency plan forms part of the overall state emergency plan, and we were about to see it in action in real time. I'll talk you through each of the steps. The first thing we saw as we landed was a third wave of response. This consisted of approximately 15 to 20 fire trucks and ambulances parked at the airport perimeter, just outside one of the utility gates closest to the runway. These are outside the fence, so if all is well, they can return to normal service as quickly as possible. Next was the second wave of response. This was another 15 to 20 emergency services vehicles, including more metropolitan fire trucks, ambulance and police vehicles. These were stationed inside the airport grounds, further back from the runway. Finally, the first wave of response came into view. These are the airport firefighters who were located very close to the runway. You can see the level of detail in their preparation, with the trucks facing in different directions so they can respond as quickly as possible, regardless of where the emergency happens during the landing. In these situations, every second counts. As I suspected, and much to the relief of everyone on board, we landed smoothly and proceeded back to the gate. The airport firefighters, again following emergency plan protocols, followed us all the way back to the gate. One other detail you may have missed. As we landed, an airport operations vehicle was stationed at the end of the runway. It followed us down the runway. I assume this is to ensure that nothing dropped off our aircraft so that the runway could be reopened as quickly as possible. With the first part of the operation, that is getting us back on the ground safely, completed, it was time for step 2, what to do with all of us passengers. Stay tuned and I'll show you exactly what happens in these situations and give you some tips on how to handle it.
Well, that was a little bit shorter flight than expected. Welcome back to Melbourne. We've been asked to disembark and we've got to collect our bags from carousel number 2, so I don't think I'm going to be going to Sri Lanka tonight.
We were taken back through immigration and then told we didn't need to collect our bags. This indicated to me that the problem may be fixed quickly and we'd be back on our way. We were advised to head back up to the check-in area. This is where the waiting started.
So we're still waiting on the captain's call. It's going to be an hour before they know whether we can check in again. So we're getting a meal voucher and then we're going to come back in an hour.
That meal voucher never appeared. Then disaster struck.
Well, my day just got better. Ah, shit.
The aroma of expensive rum and whiskey filled the air.
Thank goodness for the cleaning crew.
In these situations, there's always some uncertainty as the engineers work out if the issue can be fixed in time before the crew hours run out. Once the crew go over their hours, they legally and for safety reasons cannot fly.
Something is happening, but they've got the person with the most softly spoken voice telling the people over there, so eventually we'll find out. At times like this, you really need somebody with a booming voice. I'm happy to do it, but I don't know what's happening. But you need somebody that can actually shout to everybody so that everybody can find out at the same time. The crowd's not happy. People are starting to get a bit agitated. So the biggest issue that people have got, to speak to some other passengers, is the lack of information and the confusion. I can understand it from the airline's perspective in that they don't know how long the problem is going to be fixed, but the gate staff here or the check-in staff need to let us know that is happening, and even if they don't know, tell us that they don't know and what the likely protocols are going to be. telling a few people at the front and expecting that news to filter through just is never going to work. It's just never going to work. So, the announcement finally made over the PA system. We've got to come back to here for hotel vouchers and rebooking onto other flights. So, it doesn't look like we're going to Sri Lanka tonight.
As you'd imagine, finding hotel rooms for 250 passengers at late notice also takes a fair bit of time. Whilst the ground crew could certainly have handled the communications better, I know that behind the scenes they were doing everything they could to fix things as quickly as possible. My tip is to stay calm and let the process unfold. Getting irate won't achieve anything and only increases tensions and stress levels.
I think there really is movement now. It's starting to happen. People are starting to get the hotel. In the meantime, Channel 9 over there are doing a live cross, and they've asked if they can interview me, so I'll be doing that in a minute as well. This is all getting, I was going to say exciting. Is it getting exciting yet?
As you can see behind me, there are
The air side of everything worked well, the emergency vehicles, all of that part worked really well. And then we got up here and yeah, it's taken a good couple of hours.
With my 20 seconds of fame over, it was time to head to the hotel, have a bite to eat and get some sleep. The cost of the hotel rooms, the evening meal and our breakfasts in the morning were all paid for by Sri Lankan Airlines. In the morning we woke to see our aircraft basking in the Melbourne sun. We were fully expecting to fly out that morning, but sadly those hopes were dashed by an email from Sri Lankan advising us that our flight would not be departing until 3 AM the following morning. In these situations, the airline has a responsibility to get you to your destination and will obviously try to fly you on their own aircraft. The 3 AM departure would not work for us, as we were only going to be in Sri Lanka for 3 days to begin with, and this would cut our time in half. At times like this, it's important to move quickly. Both I and our office looked at the options. We concluded that that day's scheduled Sri Lankan Airlines flight, or a flight with Malaysian Airlines leaving mid-afternoon, was the best we could do. I contacted Sri Lankan Airlines and asked if they could move our booking. I admit I used some industry contacts to speed up the comms process. However, even without industry contacts, the advice remains the same. Research other flight options quickly and suggest a solution to the airline before they get swamped. Staying calm and friendly also helps. Our plan worked and Sri Lankan Airlines rebooked us onto Malaysian Airlines, flying via Kuala Lumpur.
Take two. Let's see if we can get to Colombo this time. Here's a pro tip for you. Always take a photo of your suitcase, your checked in luggage when you check in. I've just gone to the ground handlers here with Sri Lankan Airlines to retrieve my bags. Now, one of them has to go downstairs, look at 300 bags and take mine out. Now, he knows what they look like. So it's going to make that process much quicker, much simpler.
Reunited with our bags, we checked in with Malaysian Airlines.
Seems like we were only here yesterday. And it's time to fly again. Thank you. Bye-bye. See ya. Let's go to KL and then through to Colombo.
We were in luck. The first leg to Kuala Lumpur was on a very fancy new A350. This one had recently come from SAS Scandinavian Airlines and still featured their interior. We pushed back under ominous skies and things only got worse as we taxied out to the runway.
This trip just keeps on giving. We were taxied away and as you can see the weather was starting to close in. As we got closer to the runway, a storm has well and truly hit. The whole aircraft is shaking and there's no movement here at all at Melbourne Airport, so we're going to be delayed for just a little bit longer.
Eventually, we made it up into the air and it was probably my best ever flight on Malaysian. Here's a quick peek of the experience, but I'll be creating a full flight review video of this one for my channel, so if you haven't yet subscribed, I'd recommend doing so and hitting that notification bell.
And yes, you can ask for seconds.
We landed in KL early evening and after a quick visit to the lounge, boarded our next flight. This second leg from KL to Colombo was in a smaller 737, but still featured the famous Malaysian Airlines Sartes. We eventually arrived in Colombo on schedule 24 hours later than originally planned.
Welcome to Sri Lanka. I am very happy to finally be here. Ironically, it's going to be only 48 hours and I'm going to be back in this same spot to head home and hopefully complete the Sri Lankan Airlines review.
We still ended up with 2 full days in Sri Lanka. We have a Bunny Tours office here, and the purpose of our visit was to spend time with the team and deliver a series of training sessions. They're such a great, dedicated and fun bunch of people. I love spending time with these guys.
And it's time to start the journey home. Sri Lankan Airlines does have a dedicated check-in area here for business class passengers, so a nice way to start. You know it makes sense, don't you? Colombo gin, yes.
There are strict rules against filming out of the windows at Colombo Airport. This is for security reasons. This includes the lounge as it overlooks the apron. Here are some sneaky shots of the lounge itself that I don't think cause too much of a security risk. Overall, this lounge was pretty good.
And it's time to fly. Let's fly to Melbourne and finally finish the Sri Lankan Airlines review. Looking forward to this flight. It's always good going home. Now, this flight to Melbourne is not without issues. We got notification this afternoon that the flight would be delayed by 2 hours. Instead of a 12:35 a.m. departure, we're leaving at 2:20 a.m. So I will be looking forward to that sleep. One of my Sri Lankan friends here joked that the UL in Sri Lankan Airlines flight numbers actually stands for usually late. So they do have a bit of a reputation. So we were lured to the gate with a final call. We're packed in here now. Look at that. It's a full lounge. And the announcement's just come through. They've been delayed by another 40 minutes to a 3 a.m. departure. Let's see how that goes. This guy's using the strategy of putting the crying baby next to the staff so that they'll encourage the aircraft to take off quicker, I think. I hope it works.
It worked, and soon we were boarding. Sparkling wine, please. Lovely.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Here we go again. Cheers. Here's to a great flight.
You are advised to keep your seatbelt fastened and visible at all times throughout the flight.
Within 15 minutes of takeoff, my drink was served, accompanied by roasted Sri Lankan cashews. Then, within 30 minutes of our departure, our dinner was served. This crew was on point. For mains, I went with the lamb pie. Overall, this meal was okay, but by now it was 4 a.m. and my body really wasn't feeling it. Here's a quick look at the menu for this meal. I'll show you the breakfast menu later in the video. Now that we're on our way, let's finally have a good look at the Sri Lankan Airlines business class cabin. This footage was filmed across both flights, which explains why some of it is filmed in daylight. The cabin is laid out in a 1-2-1 configuration, meaning that every passenger has direct aisle access. This already puts these seats above the likes of Lufthansa and the Emirates 777 business class. The seats themselves are comfortable to sit in and the controls are easy to use. You've got plenty of space to spread out and the various plugs and controls are right where you need them. There doesn't appear to be much storage space though, and the tray table was a bit small. My primary mission on this flight was to sleep, so straight after my meal I converted my seat into a lay flat bed using an extra blanket to provide the bottom sheet. Overall, this was a very comfortable bed. The foot space is a bit tight on this design of seats, but the middle seats have slightly more footroom than the window seats. The main test though is how did I sleep? I was out for almost 6 hours, so I'd say this bed did exactly what it was meant to do. The Sri Lankan amenities kit looked okay and was stocked with the usual lotions and potions. Socks and an eye mask are also provided. When I woke up, I had a bit of a play with the entertainment system. The map was really good. Unfortunately, I found the rest of the system relatively basic and clunky to navigate around. The remote was slightly easier than the touchscreen to operate. From what I could tell, there were 140 movies and about 190 TV shows to choose from, as well as some news stories to read. There was no Wi-Fi available on this aircraft. As the cabin woke up, the crew were again hard at work. First came juice, which was followed by another meal. We'll call this breakfast, however by now it was late morning in Sri Lanka and late afternoon in Melbourne. I went with the spinach omelette and it was perfectly fine. Then as we flew over my home state of South Australia, I reflected on my entire Sri Lankan Airlines experience. It's not really fair to compare Sri Lankan with the likes of Qatar, Emirates or Singapore Airlines. These airlines are far better resourced and charge considerably higher fares. Sri Lankan's meals may not be in the same league, their cabins may be more dated and the entertainment system more basic, but what they offer is great business class fares and good value for money. As an airline, they've struggled more than most coming out of COVID. This was exacerbated by the financial crisis in Sri Lanka and the fact that the airline is government owned. This is an airline that would benefit greatly from privatisation and an injection of funds. Because at its very heart, its biggest strength is its staff. Every staff member I met was friendly and doing their very best to make the Sri Lankan Airlines experience a positive one. The crew on board both flights were excellent. They were friendly and proactive, and most importantly, when crisis hit on that first flight out of Melbourne, they reacted exactly how they should and handled the incident with the utmost professionalism. They got us back on the ground safely, and at the end of the day, that's what really counts.
And that's it. Through customs, we've come up to the domestic check-in area here. We'll drop the bags off and then hop on the final leg through to Adelaide. That final flight with Sri Lankan Airlines was actually really nice. It did exactly what it says on the box. It allowed me to get a good night's sleep on the way back home, and I'm feeling relatively refreshed considering it's been a chaotic week. Would I fly Sri Lankan Airlines again? Yes, I would. Obviously, when things go wrong, they need to be handled well, and things do go wrong with every airline in the world. It's how it's handled, and I think ultimately the crew and the staff on board on all of the Sri Lankan Airlines experiences of flights we've had here have been really, really good. So on that basis, yes, I would fly them again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. If you haven't subscribed, please do hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll be first to hear when I release a new video. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy travels.
And finally, you may be wondering what happened to our original aircraft and the other passengers. The tech issue and the cause of smoke? Well, as expected, it was a problem with the air conditioning seals, and the aircraft was grounded for 5 days as a tech crew and spare parts were flown in from Sri Lanka. All the other passengers were flown out within 24 hours with Sri Lankan, Singapore Airlines and Malaysian. And then on the 17th, when I was back home and editing this video, I noticed that the Sri Lankan Airlines A330 was finally back on its way home on a relocation flight carrying only cargo and that tech crew.